The asteroid did not kill the dinosaurs. The morning did. Take a second with that, because everything you have ever been told about this story, every documentary, every museum exhibit, every diagram of the Chicxulub crater has been answering the wrong question. The rock itself, 12 kilometers wide, taller than Everest, traveling at 20 kilometers per second, it crossed 100 kilometers of atmosphere in under 2 seconds. Under 2 seconds. At full speed, at full mass. It hit at full strength, and yes, within a certain radius, nothing survived it. That radius was real. The physics were real. But outside that radius, animals survived. The extinction did not happen in 2 seconds. It happened over 2 years, in the dark, slowly, and with complete structural precision. Here is what nobody tells you, that slow death was survivable. Other species did survive it. Some of them even thrived. The dinosaurs did not. Not because the rock was too big, not because the energy was too much, not because 165 million years of evolution had somehow left them fragile. Because of when it arrived. Not where, not how hard, when. This video is not about the asteroid, it is about the morning it chose. Before we get to the morning, we need to correct something. A version of this story you have probably already heard, and it is wrong in a way that matters. The version goes like this. The dinosaurs were already in decline. Volcanism, shifting sea levels, dynasties contracting. The asteroid didn't end a thriving world. It finished off one already dying. The rock was the final act of a story already ending. In October 2025, a paper published in Science closed that argument. Scientists studying New Mexico's most complete late Cretaceous snapshot found no sign of decline, no contraction, no consolidation, the opposite. Steve Brusatte, one of the lead authors, was direct about it. There is no sign that these dinosaurs were in any trouble, not fading, not retreating, at full strength. This was not a world in decline. It was 165 million years of refinement at full expression. Every major terrestrial niche occupied, every dynasty still branching, still finding new ways to be alive in a world that had rewarded exactly that kind of investment for longer than our entire genus has existed. And then, on one specific morning in spring, it stopped. Which brings us to the question this video is actually answering. If almost any other morning in the last 165 million years would have saved them, what was so specific about that one that made survival not just unlikely, but structurally impossible for every large animal on Earth at once? Not improbable, structurally impossible. There are 3 reasons. The first was already written before the shell even cracked. The second was built into the bone. The third belongs to the animals who actually survived day 1. And that is the one that should stay with you. For decades, scientists assumed dinosaur eggs hatched fast, warm-blooded, bird-related. The textbook said days to weeks. That assumption ended in 2017. A team led by Gregory Erickson looked at the teeth, the embryonic ones still inside the egg. Inside those teeth were von Ebner growth lines, daily rings, 1 per day. You count the lines, you get the days. Protoceratops, 83 days. Hippacrosaurus, 171 days. That is longer than a human pregnancy's 2nd and 3rd trimesters combined. 3 to 6 months. Not days, months. And here is what that means for a Tuesday morning in spring. The forest floors of late Cretaceous North America were not empty. They were covered in clutches at every stage of a 3 to 6 month clock. Some laid that morning, some 2 months in, some within weeks of hatching. Every single one of them, every embryo at every stage, was stationary, dependent, going nowhere. It arrived in spring, confirmed independently by 2 separate research teams. The one window in the entire year when every reproductive investment was concentrated in one layer of ground, going nowhere. The first door was not opened by the asteroid. It was already open. It had been open for 6 months. The first door closed before the rock arrived. The second one had been closing for 35 years. Here is a number that was wrong for 50 years. 25. That was the accepted age of T-Rex sexual maturity. It felt like a number a world as stable as the late Cretaceous could absorb. In January 2026, Holly Woodward and her team published a study on 17 T-Rex specimens. They read the hidden rings inside the bone, the ones that standard analysis erases as the animal grows, the rings that tell you the real number, 35 to 40 years. Not 25, nearly double. A T-Rex hatchling was the size of a large chicken, and for 35 to 40 years, every link in the food chain had to hold before it became the animal we recognize. The impact winter hit the bottom of the food chain first. Within weeks, the plants were gone. Then the animals that ate them. A hatchling, born after the asteroid, was not facing a difficult environment. It was facing a broken contract. It was not a death sentence delivered by the asteroid. It was a death sentence that had been written into the bone long before the rock arrived. The asteroid just made it legible. 2 doors, both closed before the rock arrived, both fatal on their own. The third door is different because it belongs to the animals who actually made it through. Some animals made it through day 1, not many, but some. Animals that found cover, rode out the initial firestorm, survived long enough to face what came next. Because they are the cruelest outcome. The sky was not clear. A stratospheric layer was already forming, blocking sunlight for up to 2 years, not dimmed, blocked. And it knew exactly which part of the food chain to hit first. Phytoplankton collapsed within weeks. Then the plants, then the herbivores, then the carnivores. It started at the bottom and worked upward. The animals with the highest caloric demands were the last to feel it coming. An Alamosaurus, 30 meters long, 30 tons, one of the largest animals ever to walk the earth, required a functioning food chain the way a city requires a power grid, not as a convenience, as a structural precondition of existing. When the grid went down, the city did not immediately go dark. It took time for the backup systems to fail, for the generators to run out, for the last lights to go out one by one. That process for Alamosaurus took approximately 2 years. The animals that survived day 1 did not survive the asteroid. They survived long enough to watch everything they needed to survive disappear, one system at a time, in the dark. These were not the lucky ones, they were the last to die. And there is a specific cruelty in that distinction that the first door and the second door do not contain, because door 1 and door 2 closed before the rock arrived. Door 3 closed slowly in the aftermath for animals that had already done everything right. 3 answers to the question. 3 reasons the morning was structurally impossible. The egg, the bone, the survivors who did everything right and died anyway. Now feel them at actual scale. What it was doing, right up to the boundary, was diversifying. Triceratops was the most abundant large dinosaur in that formation. Not the most famous, the most abundant. The distinction matters. Abundance is not a sign of a species coasting. It is a sign of a species actively working, filling niches, branching into new ecological roles, doing exactly what successful lineages do when the conditions are good and the selective pressure is productive. New species of Triceratops were still emerging. The genus was still finding new ways to be Triceratops. There is something specifically haunting about that, still branching on that morning. Now change the scale entirely. It did not die in 2 seconds. To survive, Alamosaurus required a food chain the way a city requires a power grid, not as a convenience, not as a preference, but as a structural precondition of existing. Remove any link in that chain, and the system does not collapse gracefully. The impact winter began to shut down photosynthesis within weeks of the asteroid's arrival, not immediately. Within weeks, which means Alamosaurus did not die on day 1. It survived day 1. It survived day 10. It survived long enough for the food chain that supported it to quietly, systematically stop functioning, one trophic level at a time, from the bottom up. The asteroid killed Alamosaurus instantly. It just took approximately 2 years for the body to notice. The largest animal ever to walk the land, starving to death in the dark, over 2 years, because a rock the size of a mountain arrived on the wrong morning. That is not a disaster. That is something that does not have a word. The Chicxulub impactor was approximately 12 kilometers wide, taller than Everest. It crossed 100 kilometers of atmosphere in under 2 seconds, not slowing, not breaking up meaningfully. At full speed, at full mass, at full energy, in under 2 seconds. And here is where it stops being a biology lesson. That rock had been traveling through empty space for billions of years. Its trajectory was set before the dinosaurs existed, before the Earth had oceans, before any living thing had learned to build a spine. The rock's trajectory was set 55 genus lifetimes before our kind existed. It was not aimed. It was not timed. No force in the universe pointed it at a Tuesday morning in spring and decided that 165 million years of refinement had run its course. It did not know it was nesting season. It did not know the forest floors were full of clutches 3 months into a 6-month clock. It didn't know that the largest animals on Earth needed 35 years just to reach their fighting weight, or that the food chain they depended on would take exactly 2 years to fully collapse, or that the one window in which their reproductive investment was maximally committed and maximally immobile happened to be spring. It didn't know any of it. It was just a rock. And every specific, structural, interlocking reason that the morning was unsurvivable, everything we have covered, every door, every mechanism, none of it was arranged, none of it was aimed. It was a collision between a rock on a billions of years old trajectory and a world that had spent 165 million years becoming exactly the kind of world that trajectory would destroy. The universe did not do this on purpose. That is the part that stays with you. Below the surface, in the soil layer the asteroid could not touch, something else was already happening. So who was down there? And what had already made that world its own? I know what you're thinking. If the timing was a structural death sentence, if spring nesting season and 6-month incubation and 35-year growth windows made survival impossible, then why are there birds? State it before you think it, because this objection is not a problem for the argument. It is the argument's sharpest edge. Birds are dinosaurs, taxonomically precisely, without qualification. Every sparrow, every chicken, every pigeon, living dinosaurs. They didn't merely survive, they diversified explosively. Over 10,000 living species, on every continent, in every habitat that exists. So the question is not whether birds survived. The question is why. Rapid incubation, days to weeks, not months. Door 1 did not exist for them in the same form. Small body size, minimal caloric demands at exactly the moment the food chain stopped functioning at scale. Door 2 did not apply. Metabolic flexibility, seeds, insects, carrion, fungi. The food chain that was still there, not the one that was collapsing. Fast reproduction, short cycles, high numbers, a lineage that loses 90% of its individuals and can rebuild in 2 breeding seasons survives. One that needs 35 years per generation does not. Brusata puts it cleanly. The survivors had the perfect lottery ticket. Lived on the ground, ate seeds, adaptable, fast-growing, able to fly well. None of these traits evolved because disaster was coming. Every one of them was already there for a completely different reason. That is the rule this entire video has been building toward. Survival was not strength. It was not foresight. It was not superiority. It was accidents that happened to be useful on one specific morning, in one specific season, when a rock that had been traveling through empty space for billions of years arrived without warning, without aim, without any knowledge of what it was about to destroy. And not all birds survived. That needs to be said clearly. The Enantiornithes, the opposite birds, over 80 known taxa, the dominant avian group of the Cretaceous, disappeared entirely. Tree dwellers perished when the forests collapsed. The birds that survived were ground dwellers with flexible diets and fast reproductive cycles. The exception confirms the rule exactly. Survival selected for the specific combination of traits that happened to be useful in a world without photosynthesis. Every lineage that lacked that combination, including most of the birds, did not make it. One lineage of dinosaurs survived. One. By accident. And we know this, with unusual precision, because of what is still sitting in the rock in North Dakota. The Tanis site in North Dakota is not a graveyard, it is a photograph. Everything in that rock layer died within hours of the same morning, including a Thescelosaurus whose leg is still sitting in the matrix with its skin impressions intact. Scientists know this not because they guessed, they know it because they read the bone. The Thescelosaurus was a subadult. Its growth rings tell you exactly how long it had been alive and exactly how far it still had to go. It was years from full size, still climbing, born into the most biodiverse, most ecologically productive moment in 165 million years of dinosaur history. A world that had, until that specific Tuesday, given every indication of continuing indefinitely. And lying in the same layer of rock, in the same stratum the same morning, paleontologists found one more thing. A feather. Avian. Small. From the one lineage that made it out. One small object. In the same frame as everything that didn't. Without the impact, dinosaurs cross the boundary and keep going. Triceratops. Tyrannosaurus. The hadrosaurs still working the floodplains. The extinction was not inevitable. Brussati's 2025 paper closes that argument permanently. It was one rock, one trajectory. It didn't know it was spring. It did not know it was nesting season, and it was just a rock. And that rock arrived on one specific morning in spring. Not because it was aimed, not because it was timed, not because anything in the universe decided that 165 million years of refinement had run its course. It arrived because that is where the math put it. The mammals that inherited everything, the small, fast, flexible, seed-eating things already living in the one layer the asteroid could not touch, did not earn it. They did not outcompete the dinosaurs. They did not outlast them through superior strategy or greater resilience. They survived because they happened to already be built for a world that did not exist yet. One of those mammals, after 66 million years of the same blind, accidental process, eventually learned to dig up the rock layer and read what was inside it. We are the accident. They were the plan.